All right, so for this lecture, this is just more of an open-ended discussion area. Students are interested in uh, the gaming industry, so I just opened up the Gamification website just because it used to be a place to go to for those who are interested in game design and development. So there's always like blogs and articles written by people in the industry covering like it could be anything random, like level design, game design, to just more open-ended stuff like game production. How does the whole studio run? How do you deal with time management, project management? Um, Obviously, development programming took a lot. It was just like an industry place to hang out and talk. So a lot of forums and blogs, and there's a lot of career stuff. So there still is right and foremost jobs. So if you notice, there's not too many. So one, yeah, you do have to consider game development a bit of a niche industry, skill set wise. It is very large. Don't know what year this happened, but within the last 5 years, the video game industry did surpass movies or Hollywood, as a larger entertainment business. I don't know the exact numbers, but we're talking about a global industry of billions of dollars a year. But it is very competitive. There is way more interested job candidates than there are job openings. It's just one of those industries that is seems really cool, and like when people have to get a job, they're like, I want to do something really cool and fun. And so these are just one of those areas that they'll focus on. So in general, I guess you could think of like computer graphics, you could think of animations, special effects, so post effects in movies and commercials where they overlay computer graphics on top of live action video. You can think of animated series, cartoons, and movies that are fully computer graphics. You can think of interactive experiences like video games and computer software, simulations. You could also think of museum. There's also this movement into physical computing where there's a lot of needs for computing and interactive visualizations, but they're placed and interacted with in a physical environment. So that's known as physical computing. Um, or and that's this kind of very vague and transitional zone. So you might think of museum exhibits or um, science. Is it like when like children's science museums? I'm thinking of the Liberty Science um, exhibits where it's very interactive, where there's a lot of like mechanical and physical parts that are moving, but there's also a lot of computer screens that are being interacted with, like large touch screens. And this is also an overlay with the same technologies and skill sets. You might think of like projection mapping, like at concerts, um, and like when they like map computer graphics on buildings and make them look like something completely different, and even to like large digital billboards like Times Square. And the idea of an interaction is completely vague and might just be like people walking by and like going to a website and entering something and like polls being taken on massive billboards to people sitting in theaters. Um, One of my last jobs in Madison Square Garden, where they're going to have this like massive dome, um, and people are going to play massive multiplayer games within it. Oh, they updated the website. That looks nice. It's this massive LED crazy structure in LA and London. And you go inside of it, and this whole freaking thing is a TV screen. The whole thing is the interactive display. You sit in the middle of it. Cool, they got a sizzle reel. Yeah, this is all new. And you have a massive multiplayer game with 20,000 people. What does this mean? There's a lot of exploring the space. So this idea of games as an industry has changed a lot. It's a relatively young industry. You could argue, I mean, it really kind of took off like 40 years ago in the 80s with, well, first Atari was the first forerunner in like the late 70s, going into the 80s, and then Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Um, and then it just kept growing and growing. You know, the consoles kept getting more sophisticated and more players, and the industry was growing. Then it turned to um, PC gaming, and consoles changed. Like there were like handhelds, and then the phone market got really big, and then mobile gaming exploded as well. And then all of a sudden, these like headsets started coming on the scene, like virtual reality, and now augmented reality is getting really big with the phone, and now the new glasses coming out. And the idea of gaming just continues to evolve. There's AR games and world-based games, but there's the old traditional games that are still popular, board games and card games, and there's back and forth with that, like with Magic the Card Gathering, and then popular card games might be digitalized, and digital games might be analog version. Um, but anyway, you have to think of video games as the idea of play and human beings. One of their major pastimes is play or entertainment. We naturally learn through play. That's just how children actually learn. It's interesting being a parent now and seeing it happen through the stages. So, and then video games is this interesting cross section of like hardcore computer science mixed with graphics and interaction, and it's a play of like two mindsets at once. You have to be creative and logical. It's a real mental exercise to stay with it, throughout the whole thing, as you grow, I should say, and stick with it as a career. So, and there is no like straight path. Some people might come in as artists and designers, or Q&A, or this database administrators, or project managers, or customer service, or just straight up programmers, web developers, or people might go straight in as game programmers, game designers, game artists. Um, but there's such a wide breadth of skill sets, um, to always hone, that there is no clear path. And also, it's important to note that just because if you get a job as, say, a database administrator at a bank, or a project manager for a marketing company, or even something like a warehouse manager for a Target or Amazon, it's important to just note that these skill sets are adaptable and necessary in the game design industry. So a lot of people start in completely different fields and kind of make their way there, whatever there is, in relation to the gaming industry. So don't be discouraged right away. A lot of you will not be going into the gaming industry right away. I didn't, and that's okay. And there's a lot to learn, as I was saying, with all these auxiliary skill sets that get you to there. And a lot of people don't make it, or make it to what they think they want. Like, I want to do this in the 20s, and they might not get there till the 30s or 40s. And that's okay. And a lot of people, that's the path that they take. Yeah, sure, you may have these one-off people who get to the dream state, at 25, but they're very rare. And let me tell you something, once you make it, the grass is always greener. It's not as, not, it's not this mecca ultimate dream that you think it is. It's still work. And work has that word for a reason, is that You don't play the games. It's really great and fun to be involved in the industry, but it's work. I mean, they pay you to really give it your best every day, and it's tough. Even if it's non-game industry jobs, everything is tough and hard work. But you find your passion, you find your interest along the way, and whatever it is. So I'm just saying, just showing you things like, for example, this MSG sphere. Like, I had no issue staying with this job with this project. It was very related to games, and there was a lot of overlap, and I was growing really well there. And I would still call this like a game studio that I worked at, although technically, it's building these massive multiplayer gaming and um, interactive experiences for the sphere, for this big entertainment complex that's in Vegas. Technically that is not the games industry, um, but I would call it that, just because the skill sets I had to use and refine there was completely. I was programming in Unity and thinking about building tools for other game developers and thinking about the game design process. And I was working with game design directors who were coming from the industry. I mean, we worked with John Romero. That's an older name in the industry, but he was the game designer for Doom and Quake. And if you've taken any of DJ's classes, you know, God help you when you're going to have to mod Quake and Quake 2. But the point is that John Romero is like a legend in the industry, and he runs his own game studio in somewhere in Ireland. But the point is, like, he's living the dream. He's running his game studio, but he's getting hired to work with us on these MHU Sphere because these experiences are just so new. You need somebody who's just like really experienced in thinking outside the box. And you have to be really as creative, trying to springboard and jump yourself amongst jobs as you develop and grow. Now, I could give you some advice on your first few jumps in the real world. Um, and you could take each with a grain of salt and see which apply to you. So the thing is, when you take advice from people, is definitely listen to a lot of people and talk to a lot of people and network. Go into New York City, go to meetups, join IDGA, talk to people online, build a very nice LinkedIn profile and start to connect with people. And when you connect with people, send them nice messages first that show that you understand who they are and what you're trying to get out of them. And you'll more likely will get like a connect, like an acceptance and like a response back. Go to industry events, which I know are expensive, but like PAX and GDC and SIGGRAPH, they're very eye-opening. Now you have to be aware that it's not like you go there, the door's going to open. And you're like, oh my God, that was it. Nothing happened. And that was my door. That's going to open. It's like, no, it's not how the real world works. But going to these conferences, um, and like just exposing yourself to new people and new situations and seeing what the industry is really about, it's just going to change you. It's going to change your frame of mind. It's going to change who you are, who your goals are, what you think is success and failure. And you need to learn how to do like baby steps. Real success is small steps every day. It's not the big home run. It's not actually getting the big job, because getting the big job is going to take years of sustained effort, small steps every single day for years. And I know the conferences are expensive, and like, we try to get funds together, and there's ways to like do it on the cheap, and sometimes you just have to suck it up and increase your expenses short term in hopes that they'll pay off in the long term. You could think of it like investing in your future. Um, so besides all this ideas of networking and exposing yourself to the industry and people, new experience and locations, you do have to accept certain realities that this industry really isn't around here locally. Now, the world's changed over the last few years. There's a lot more remote work, which is good and bad, because remote work means you don't get as much of that experience. Like, you need that hands-on experience. You just need to be there with people and absorb through osmosis how the studio is working. That's what internships are really for. You don't have those experiences right now. So you have to look at the changed world and how you can play with it, how you can make winning steps. And sure, there's a lot more remote work. Maybe there's more opportunities to get involved with people and projects, maybe for free or for a very limited amount of income to start with, which I know is rough. I had to go through that as well. Um, for those of you who can, moving is going to be a big option. A lot of people I know, and they're in love with animation, they're in love with video games, they're in love with some type of industry that's centered up in certain regions or cities. You just kind of have to suck it up and move. And you're going to have to go to a new location and rebuild from there. And a lot of people do that. Saying that, there is opportunities in New York City. So, New York City and Brooklyn, locally, there are opportunities. There's also more local opportunities. When I say local, I mean shorter distance than, say, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Vancouver. You can think about other East Coast locations. Boston is a big gaming hub. Not as big as the West Coast, but it's definitely a big indie hub. And there's a lot of technology there because there's a lot of those like super uber universities in the region. So any type of tech work is going to be awesome. Don't think about games right away. Think about getting into tech work, any type of tech work, because everything has a multimedia element to it. Everything is getting more visuals for the users, and all that interactive visualization, user interfaces, or simulations or whatever, all of it is the same technologies. Right now, my job is heavy in JavaScript in Lens Studio, and I didn't realize how many web libraries, how many JavaScript libraries there are for all the same stuff that's happening right in Unity and Unreal. You don't have to stick to Unity and Unreal to learn all this stuff. So Boston's huge. Um, Philly is small, but interestingly, if you're in the Central and South Jersey area, which we do get quite a few students from there, Philadelphia is an interesting spot to look at because there is some activity there. South Carolina, or is it North Carolina? Wherever Unreal is, in the Research Triangle, Raleigh, I think that's North Carolina. That is a kind of a bustling hub, but technology again, where you'll see technology in general as a hub. You'll see this like technologies of video games and AR, VR there as well. So North Carolina is not that far away. And moving down the coast, would I say Maryland and Virginia? Well, there is a spot in Virginia. So Virginia, Maryland. I'll say Maryland. That's where the Sid Meier's game studios. There's a few others like the Civilization franchise and stuff is around there. There's a great website that shows all of the game studios geographically. It's like gamemaps.com or something. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, if you could post up the link, that'd be awesome. I used to look at that quite a bit. But moving down south, actually, strangely enough, Florida is a big hub for games and animation work in general, only because the living cost in Florida is like the cheapest in the US, more or less. And a lot of this type of work, went offshores quite a while ago, especially animation work, when it's a lot cheaper to pay people in lower cost countries because these are global skill sets. So, American workers are competing globally for this type of work. But so anyway, Florida is has to be helped just because you can pay people cheaper, and they can live on less money down there. And there's some pretty large studios like Disney and other things are down there. And there's a few schools like Full Sail and Dave's Animation Academy or something. Anyway, there's things happening down there. Colorado's a big hub area just because of Denver, and it happens to be like a good midway zone. So when you have companies that have workforces that span different time zones, having like intermediate spots is really beneficial. Like for example, my team is mostly in London, and then it has quite some people in LA. So I'm in this useful in between time zone that syncs between them. Um, and up north, yeah, Toronto, some as well. But let me turn my focus back onto New York City and Brooklyn. New Jersey happens to have quite a few what are called serious gaming companies. Like I worked actually quite a bit. There's a local military research base called RDEC, Army Research Engineering Development Center, in It's at the Picatinny Arsenal, Dover, New Jersey. Now, there's a lot of like need for 3D simulations. We worked a lot in Unity and Unreal, and then VR started getting really big there as well. And there's a lot of like contractors scattered about in Western Jersey and down in the shore, and by the shore because there's actually like a I forget if it's a naval or a Air Force research base, Fort Monmouth, and some affiliated forts down there by the beach. But so anyway, there's these military contractors. Um, and yeah, you might consider that not games, but I was taking motion capture data, applying them onto humanoid characters in Maya and Motion Builder, and getting that data over into Unity, and building and getting all these vehicles on a base scanned and rebuilding them with artists and Max and Maya and putting everything together and then building these interactive tutorials and lessons in Unity. Um, and it's not as fun as a first-person shooter, but all the same explosions and guns and it's all everything that makes a first-person shooter in a military simulation. But more importantly, is you're actively building your skill set. You're in an active affiliate industry. You're building your portfolio. I can't tell you having a strong portfolio website how important that is, whether it's modeling or animation or program or coding in GitHub. You just need to be in it. You need to be in it and living it and breathing it. And again, it doesn't matter if it's banking or military or databases or front end or there's ways to just grow and seed. It just takes time, and you have to be willing to put in that time and that energy to maybe get there when you're 25, maybe get there when you're 30, um, which is more along the timeline that I was. And it's okay because it's your own. You're only racing against yourself, really. You can leave the school and not find a game industry position within a year and call it quits and go do something else and say it was a failure. Or you can go do something else and like recollect yourself and then eventually get into a technology job and grow in that way. Or you might decide to just move and just try and go where the big action is and try and get an internship. Or you might try to move and go to a master's program that's more connected and grows your skills. There's so many different ways to say whether you failed or succeeded at your goal. But I think ultimately, the more that you define yourself, the more that you branch out and expose yourself to all these uh, gaming disciplines, the more that you'll find, the more that you network and connect with people and not like isolate yourself, the more that you'll find a way that works for you. I think what's most important is that you find work that you find rewarding, enriching, interesting, both logically and creatively, and that pays the bills too. And as I was talking, I think it was game dev, and I haven't gotten to talking about New York dev map. Yeah, this is it. It is a great site. So, for example, you can browse by company or location. So this is New York City. Nice. I got it right off the bat. Here you go. Yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So you can go through here and click on each one, find studios you like, subscribe to their job postings, so that at least, oh, that's right. So you have to find the big aggregate job boards, LinkedIn, Indeed. Monster used to be a big one. It's probably obsolete by now. You have to find the game-related game boards, like the Gamification site that's now turned into some type of game dev site here, game dev map. You need to start just hunting and picking and finding all the places that you're interested in and apply, apply, apply. And I cannot tell you that if you have a strong LinkedIn present profile with a strong website and portfolio material, just whatever you've been working on, refine, 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 and keep putting up your presentation and cleaning it on your website. I can't tell you how many times I've been contacted through LinkedIn with recruiters. That's how I found basically all my jobs, because I've really refined my outward presentation on all these sites of who I am. I've been very defined of who I am. Now I've changed who I am many, many times throughout my career. I've gone from modeler, animator, technical artist, project manager, programmer, teacher, researcher. But whoever I was very clear about it during that time. I was very clear how I presented myself on my websites, on my social media, on my LinkedIn, in person. Because ultimately, as people get like you fish, you send out, you connect to 100 people, maybe 10 people find you interesting, maybe one person follows up with a job opportunity. And as you grow that, maybe you meet 10, maybe you meet 1,000 people through online and conferences, and maybe 1,000 people find you interesting, and maybe 100 people follow up with job opportunities. Maybe 10 people interview you, and maybe one person offers you a job. Now, don't let these numbers mess with your head. I'm just making numbers up. The point is, it's always a fishing game. You got to always just keep refining all aspects of it: your bait, your pole, your hook, your technique. And you just get better at it. It's just an experience game, and it's a confidence game. And just keep taking jobs and refining skill sets. But the one number one is the more technical you can be, the better off you'll always be, no matter what, hands down in this field. Doesn't matter where you're starting and how you push yourself technically, there's always a way to start from A to B. Just focus on an area you're super passionate about and you keep doing it and doing it. By the way, technical, the term doesn't mean programming, and it's not always related to computer. It means technique. The more technical you make yourself, the more you can understand the processes that you're putting your effort into. Doesn't matter if you're a VFX artist and focusing on VFX systems, or UIs and always focusing on little buttons and tight little graphics in Illustrator. Doesn't matter if concept artist, animator, modeler, level designer, game designer, writer, programmer, project manager. Because whatever your trades are, whatever the anvil is that you sharpen your tools on, you will find better techniques through experience. You'll find little macros. You'll start to write little snippets of code, even if you've never been a coder before. You'll find quicker ways to wire up your nodes. You'll find quicker and better brushes. You'll make your own brushes. You'll make your own vector artwork, your macros to define boxes and circles that much faster. It's all about speed and efficiency, quality. It's about working with teams and understanding their expectations, understanding what they need to deliver to define themselves as having done a good job. And it's not always what you expect it to be. That's why it's really about the experiences that you get. And that's why in these classes, it's like it's not really what you're making and like I'm gonna make this and that, and all of a sudden I'm gonna be done and ready to go and sell my indie game rights out of class. It's like no, it doesn't work that way. Use your passions to be super focused and to actually be learning actively instead of watching TV or playing video games or whatever it is that you pass the time with. Um, and as you do that stuff and start to look outside into the world, start to understand the industry around you, you get to develop better plans and organize your life better and make better progress every day toward whatever it is that you're trying to be. So in this case, there is a gaming industry in New York. It's just smaller than the hubs, and they do different things. Um, it used, Mobile gaming used to be really big. I think it still is. You're not going to find the big AAA studios, although there is like little satellite offices of the big studios in New York. But there's a lot of affiliate things going on. New York is a tech center. The big traditional ones of banking and um, major corporate communications, because there's a lot of headquarters here. But then you do have these things like VFX and animation. You have these VFX houses. Brooklyn is a big, trendy, artsy place. So all the artist designers are living there. So if like you're on the designy arty side of gaming, living in Brooklyn and trying to find a job in Brooklyn or New York is might be the way to go because you'd be entrenched and viewed in the culture of interactive design um, that's happening in New York City, which is all really related to gaming. There's definitely a growing AR VR presence. Um, there's a lot of big tech houses here have an office like Facebook and Google, Apple and Microsoft, Snap, Etsy, Uber, and what have you. And then there's a lot of like marketing and advertising companies that service that's a huge industry in New York. And they always have like jobs coming in that range in some degree or another, but deal with the game engines, deal with interactive exhibits. There's always something going on in advertising and marketing that is involving a game related skill set. And then, sure, mobile gaming does have a presence here as well. You can see this list. Now, it just so happens that you happen to be going to school at NJIT, which is really close to New York. And I can tell you that just the tech jobs in general, that the pay is well. And I think more importantly, there's just a thriving community of young tech, um, professionals. I think the community is the most important thing because even if you're like, oh, I got to take a job as a back end engineer for some bank. The thing is, you're not only are you like living and breathing in the tech industry, which games is tech, games is software. Um, you're going to be around other people who have very similar interests. You're going to be around other techie people who have to make databases and edit database all day, but they have a love for games and they're going to want to like get together and play games. But more importantly, it will be an inspiration and a driving force for you to continue refining your skill sets and working with other people and making small projects. You're adding to your portfolio, you're adding to your skill sets. And who knows, maybe this you're building that first team that actually does launch something that, hey, maybe I don't need to get a job. Maybe this indie path will work for me. Who knows? Um, but you have to think outside the box. Even back, when things were good, what does that mean? Like, you couldn't just go out and just, gaming entry level internships in gaming industry weren't just there, just falling off the tree. Like, things were never good to try and get into the gaming industry. It's always a very tough um, industry. But the thing is, now that games have been around video games have been around for 40 years, everybody expects some type of, digital entertainment is just like through and through in everyone's lives. So it's very easy to find other affiliate industries that need elements of games. I mean, that's why gamification, that word, is so trendy and big these days. And I remember working at jobs that were focused on building and designing websites. Sounds like, oh God, this is awful. But now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, how much of the skill set is the same? And when I think about user experience and I think about what user interfaces, what people need to do to get their goals accomplished in a gaming environment, it is just, I'm at such a generalized point. It's like the same as a website. So trust me when I say that don't stick your nose up at jobs you think are like, oh, that's not going to get me into games and that's boring and that's not has nothing to do with this. Because I can't tell you how many times I did that and I look back, I'm like, wow, if I just like bit the bullet sooner, I would have been so much more further along. So you're too young and inexperienced to know what's good for you, I guess is what I'm saying. Um, so really cast wide nets in your job hunts and just take it, man. Try to get those tech jobs in the city. It'll lead somewhere. Try to get them right here in New Jersey. There's a ton of corporations that need IT. And I know you don't want to do it, and I know you think it's boring, but at least you're still in the tech industry. At least it's better than having to like completely think of giving up and just taking anything in it's just like completely unrelated. Try to find some connection, some relation that's growing some skill set. You can consider that a win. And for some of you who are ready and prepped and ready to go, um, I know that I guess maybe right now is not the right time with the pandemic still going and winter coming in, but maybe in the summer or maybe when world starts normalizing again, um, hey, think about making that move to somewhere where it's more happening for you. It's okay to sometimes have to make that change, and it's okay to not. You really have to assess your own life. Again, this is just another data point of many data points to figure out what best works for you. But any technical job in New Jersey and New York will take you on that journey toward games. So graduating this semester, and it's been so hard to find entry level positions. Yep. So take your advice of people who have just graduated before you or are just graduating. If you have the extra time, Don't waste your time in college. Know that when you leave college, it will be a very rough transition, especially as the world is more uncertain in what's happening and there's more change and what have you. Um, it would be smart to try and shoot. Again, it depends on your situation. If you're ready to go move. But for most of you, you don't have as much fluidity, flexibility, luck. Aim smarter, aim lower, and work your way up. Everyone's got to work their way up. You know, it takes 10 years on average to get to where you want to get. It's okay. Everybody else has to do it too. So if you just have to take an IT role or a programming role in New Jersey or New York, or something else, a project management Q&A is a big one to start off with. Some type of assistant position. Um, at least it gets you going. What the first job is it's more of like a motivator. It's more of like a confidence builder. It's like, oh, okay, let me try doing this, and oh, this isn't as rough as I thought it would be, or hey, at least things can be worse. I could not have anything. Um, you need to be able to. It's your first step into the world. There's a lot to learn about being an adult. Um, that takes time, and that all those skill sets you can learn now. You can learn about being responsible. You can learn about paying your bills. You can learn about time management, project management, keeping yourself focused and determined and motivated and doing stuff. I'm going to use my weekends. I'm going to use my weekends and my evenings, because now my 8 hours a day are booked, but I'm paying my bills and I'm not stuck with my debt. And I can use my spare time to really try and reach out toward my dreams, but at least I'm not falling with reality right now. So, framing yourself in what is success and what is failure in simpler ways will give you the energy and the time to start continue reaching out for your dreams. Maybe at least you got your job, at least you're relatively stable. But hey, on weekends I could be a modeler and I can just keep building that website, just getting better and better and better. And hopefully I can get a few contracting roles, simple, like building some level assets. Hey, maybe I'll just start building packages in the Unity Asset Store just to be, hey, look, world, I can build professional level stuff. It's just I'm not in the industry yet. But hey, look, I'm filling up the asset store with COM models or whatever it is, and I'm putting them up on Sketchfab. And people like will just stumble across it. It's the same with YouTube and Sketchfab or Unity Asset Store. The more that you keep adding and adding and adding, or GitHub with code samples, the more that you keep adding and adding, it just starts to naturally grow. People's attention moves toward it, and people start contacting you. It's all about a volume of work. And whatever that work is whatever your interest is. Um, and sometimes you're able to do it by yourself, and sometimes you're going to need to go out there and make some friends and make some connections or join an indie project or some type of open source project. So at least you're working on it with a small group because you're just not able to do it by yourself. So is there any questions? Is there anything specific about the game industry I didn't cover? A lot of my advice is more generalizable because a lot of these pursuits are more generalizable. It's not like, oh, just because I'm in love with video games, my situation is so unique, it doesn't apply to the rest of the world. Everybody goes through this. Everybody has dreams, and everybody can make it to some extent. But it's doable. It just takes a lot of work. Wishes and well intentions is not going to get you there. Busting your ass is going to get you there. I can tell you that. Time. You know that you're ready is when you just kind of not don't care, but like when you really put in the time and effort, it's not, it's not, you're not in those that well wishing spot anymore. Um, and anybody who's made it in any industry will tell you that though. That's why it's a very universal story. Everything has a strong element of engineering and artistry to it in this field. And a lot of fields are like that as you grow older and look at them. So definitely keep pursuing, and there's always a path. It's just you're not going to get like this. Oh, just do this and everything will be fine. Like that doesn't exist for anybody. Like that at least you can have some empathy with, and people can have empathy with you because everyone's path in life is difficult, but it's manageable and you can do it. I think the trick is website, LinkedIn, resume, and however you need to display your portfolios on the website. There's affiliate sites. It might be GitHub or Sketchfab or ArtStation, or hosting your games on HIR or whatever it is. There's going to be affiliates connect to your website. And that kind of, those affiliates have like social media, like a community presence to them. And you just start to get known. It's this organic growth that you have to spend a lot of time with. And so, whatever your state is, if you still have time in college, work 80 hours a week. Like, if you have a job and you're going to college, then do your job. And every other moment you have, just work and refine. If you're leaving college, just try to get a job in as techy a spot as you can and keep pushing more toward the tech side. Because there's just more jobs, there's more work that's needed on the more tech side. Um, and even if you get a more of a designy artistry role, you're going to have to take on like additional job responsibilities that are on the more techie side because that's just where the grunt of the work usually falls because video games is software. So any type of software job will keep leading you toward software, toward video games. At the end of the day, professionals treat game development like software development. Nobody treats this like play, because if you would, you wouldn't be making anything that's worthwhile. You would get fired and you'd start starving. It's a job just like anything else. So, is there anything specifics? Website, LinkedIn, meetups, New York, resumes, job fairs, job sites. Awesome. I'm not trying to be so generalizable and loose that you're like, what is this guy talking about? And I'm not trying to be negative or like hard on you. I'm just trying to be real. But just because it's real and reality is tough, it doesn't mean you should stop pursuing your dreams, and it doesn't mean you should find that you should now think that it's impossible to get a job in the game industry. But you need to frame yourself differently. You're gonna need to take some blows. That's just life, and like uh, Rocky's out of date, but I think you said it's not about how you give your punches, it's about how you take them. So life's gonna beat you up. That's just a given. It doesn't matter if you're in this program or anything else. Um, but you're gonna need to just like keep your focus, even if you feel depressed, if you feel worthless, or that it's hopeless, or that you're broke, or whatever. It's okay to take another job, and like I took other jobs over and over again, and I tested different types of jobs I thought were in the industry, and then I left the industry and I came back and I tested it, like trying to find myself, trying to, but I was constantly had jobs because I constantly just had to pay the bills. But those jobs always had some connection. It was always on a computer. It was always with computer graphics or websites or advertising or military training or corporate car training. But there was a connection, and that connection got me through like 10, 12 jobs, and it just kept getting more. Each job jump was just more about games or more about unity or more about this or that, whatever I thought was more about the games industry. So it's okay to take your first job that's like it's almost so unrelated to games you don't even think there's a connection. There'll be a connection, and that connection will develop you and get you into a next job, which has a little bit more about games, and then the next job has a little bit. It's just this kind of feedback cycle. So it's okay to take something that you think is beneath you or not worth your time or not about games and just do it. The first steps into the real world are going to be ugly and not so pretty and prestigious. You know, I think when I was first leaving college and I was trying to figure myself out, I was like breaking crates at plant stores. And so for a few months, I was like, all right, this is ridiculous, you know? And you just get that inspiration. So I could say my first job was breaking crates at plant stores. That's what got me into games, because it was like, what do I think about my self worth? Who do I think I am? And breaking crates at plant stores is what got me to be like, I'm worth more than this. And I have interests in this. And step by step, I made a direction. So you got to do the same. That's everybody. That's the human story. But you can do it smartly and with direct attention toward who you're trying to be and what skill sets you're trying to grow. But take anything, and I mean, if it's a real quick nutshell, grab anything you can in the tech industry, no matter how loosely affiliated with it. You can always grow. Tech needs will always be in demand, and you can always maneuver them into more interesting tech pursuits. All right. So if that is it, you're free to go, and we're starting at project 3. Please fill in the design discussion, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Have a good one.